This time I would like to call to order the Yukon, Oklahoma City Council meeting for June 3rd, 2014. If you would rise with me for the invocation by Pastor Bob Younce, First United Methodist Church, and the flag salute.
Let us pray. O God, in whose grace we all live, give tonight to these leaders of our community wisdom to know what is right, and courage to do what is right, and then resolve to promote all that is right. Save all of us from the evil of cynicism about community and politics and criticism of those whose views are different from our own. We are grateful, so grateful for the good town in which we live, our leaders and our citizens. And so tonight we pray, in the spirit of all truth and goodness, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you call the roll, please?
Smith.
Here.
McCarran.
Here.
Alberts.
Here.
Russell.
Here.
Yonda.
Here.
This time we'll conduct a public hearing to receive input from the public regarding the 2014-15 City of Yukon budget. Do we have anyone that would like to address the council? Seeing none, we'll move on to presentations and proclamations.
None this evening.
Thank you. This is our visitors section of the agenda. If there's anyone that would like to address the council that's a citizen of Yukon on a non-agended item, please come forward, state your name and address.
Good evening, City Council. Rick Caccini from 1140 Landmark Drive, Yukon, Oklahoma. I'd like to report regarding our one-year anniversary of the Yukon Veterans Museum. The community has really come together. I've got large donations from West Point Dodge, Bank of Commerce, State Farm, Dolan Heating Air, but outstanding people from Thunder and Redhawks have donated a great deal. In fact, we're hoping for some of their players to attend, to include the guys that just lost, unfortunately, Kevin Durant and Westbrook. So the dinner is really coming together, and tickets are only $20 a piece, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel. Any others?
John Turner, 1529 Spur Creek Drive. This morning at the legislative breakfast, as the city manager was leaving the library, he became all red-faced in an angry, enhanced tone. Advised me, quote, "Your comments were unacceptable. I am not the professional that Grayson is. I am ignorant as to what I said that made him so disappointed. Would one of you be so kind at your convenience after this meeting, ask him for which comment and why it was so inappropriate? I would ask him myself, but I feel intimidated asking him in person that if this morning these casual comments of mine made him so disappointed, further conversation between he and I might result in a worse disposition towards me. I believe that the city manager have considerable influence, and I would not want to earn any extra attention from the Yukon Police Department. In the future, I will attempt to be more careful with my comments at the legislative breakfast. I did not realize that one of the responsibilities of the city manager was to judge which comments at the legislative breakfast were inappropriate."
Do we have anyone else that would like to address the council? Seeing none, we will recess as a Yukon City Council and reconvene as a Yukon Municipal Authority. Item 1A is a YMA consent docket. This item is placed on the agenda so the Yukon Municipal Authority by unanimous consent can designate those routine items they wish to be approved by one motion. If an item does not meet with the approval of all authority members, that item will be heard in regular order. The city manager recommends a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of May 22nd, 2014, and B, payment of material claims in the amount of $257,504.29. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Seeing no discussion, call the roll, please.
Alberts.
Yes.
Yonda.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
McCarran.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
This time we'll adjourn as a YMA, reconvene as a Yukon City Council. Council agenda, I believe we have Just a slight typo here, but I think we can get by that. Item 2A, council agenda, June 3rd, 2A, consider approving resolution YMA.
15.
So we need to
Note
come
that
back.
in the motion.
Okay. Consider approving resolution number YMA 2014-01.
It's resolution 01, that's right.
Right, Resolution 01, as a resolution approving the Yukon Municipal Authority budget for the fiscal year 2014-15 and establishing a budget amendment authority. This actually, if I'm going to accept a motion on this, I have to accept a motion that would include moving it from item 2A to item 15. Is that correct, on our budget
No,
or on our agenda?
It's correct. 2A is correct.
2A is correct.
Yes.
So YMA.
Okay, so we have not okay, let me back up. We have not adjourned as YMA.
That's correct. Yes.
Instead of this being the council agenda, item 2A, as indicated, it needs to be YMA consent docket, item 2A. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, that's how it reads.
The consent docket is 1A.
Right, YMA consent docket,
The
council,
YMA 2A.
right. Says above that, council agenda. This is actually 2A is the YMA,
Right.
item 2A.
Right.
This is just the header on the page.
Gotcha.
It's just a header on the
Item
page.
2A, consider approving resolution number YMA 2014-01, a resolution approving the YMA budget for the fiscal year 2014-15 and establishing budget amendment authority. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any discussion? Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Smith,
Yes.
McCarron,
Yes.
Yonda,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Alberts.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now, guess what? We adjourn as the YMA and reconvene as the Yukon City Council. Item 1, consent docket. This item is placed on the agenda so the City Council, by unanimous consent, can designate those routine items they wish to be approved by one motion. If an item does not meet with the approval of all council members, that item will be heard in regular order. The city manager recommends a motion that will approve: A, the minutes of the special meeting of May 22nd, 2014. B, payment of material claims in the amount of $296,079.48. C, designating the items on the attached list from the technology department as surplus and authorizing their sale, donation, or trade. D, setting the date for the next regular council meeting for June 17, 2014 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the Centennial Building, 12 South 5th Street. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Do we have any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Russell,
Yes.
Yonda,
Yes.
McCarron,
Yes.
Alberts.
Yes.
Smith,
Yes. Item 2, reports of boards, commissions, and city officials.
Done this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Item 3, consider approving resolution number 2014-07, a resolution approving the City of Yukon, Oklahoma budget for the fiscal year 2014-2015 and establishing budget amendment authority. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
McCarron,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Alberts.
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Yonda.
Yes.
Item 4, consider approving a real estate donation agreement between the City of Yukon and Integris Rural Health, Inc., DBA Integris Canadian Valley Hospital, a tract of land situated in the southeast quarter of Section 30, Township 12 North, Range 5, west of the Indian Meridian, Canadian County, Oklahoma, at no financial cost to the city. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? No discussion, call the roll, please.
Alberts,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Yonda,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
McCarron.
Yes.
Item 4A, consider accepting the special warranty deed from Integris Rural Health, Inc., DBA Integris Canadian Valley Hospital, a tract of land situated in the southeast quarter of Section 30, Township 12 North, Range 5 west of the Indian Meridian, Canadian County, Oklahoma, near the intersection of I-40 and Frisco Road at no financial cost to the city. Do we have a motion?
Yes. Second.
That was a motion
We have a motion and a second.
and a second. Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Seeing no discussion, call the roll, please.
Yonda,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
McCarron,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Alberts.
Yes.
Item 5 is the first reading of title ordinance number 1298, an ordinance which provides an amendment to the Code of Ordinances of the City of Yukon, Oklahoma by adding a section prohibiting the possession and/or use of tobacco products and electronic smoke devices in certain public buildings and on certain public properties. I believe, Mr. Clerk, that is something you'll read for us, is
Give me
that
just a
correct?
minute and I'll punch it up here. Okay, this is going to be ordinance number 1298. It is an ordinance which provides amendment to the Code of Ordinances of the City of Yukon, Oklahoma by adding a section prohibiting the possession and/or use of tobacco products and electronic smoke devices in certain public buildings and on certain public properties.
And there, no action, correct?
No action tonight. This is just an information item that will be coming up on a future agenda.
Thank you, sir. Item 6, consider approving a purchase in the amount of $42,474 for a new HVAC unit at the community center from Weatherman Mechanical to be paid from the Capital Improvements Fund as recommended by the Assistant City Manager. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
McCarron,
Yes.
Alberts,
Yes.
Yonda,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Item 7, consider approving a memo understanding between the City of Yukon, a municipal corporation, and the Yukon Economic Development Authority, a public trust, as to define the relationship and responsibilities of the parties with respect to the implementation of the Frisco Road Economic Development Project Plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion?
Probably.
Yes.
I kind of thought so. Mr. McCarron?
I yield to John if he wants to start first.
I think if it please the mayor, I just might ask that Leslie start by giving just the council kind of an explanation of the document and the history, how you've seen. I think this document might be similar to something that you've worked on in the past, so maybe no less than an hour and a half speech or something if you can.
I promise to keep it short.
Yes, ma'am.
You
Thank
have 16 seconds.
Okay, real fast. I think the way to understand this memorandum of understanding is to think of it as a step in implementing the TIF project plan. So we have our big framework, which is the statutes that govern TIF districts and that govern everything a city government does, such as your issuance of debt, your zoning, land use, contracting. All those things are controlled by statute, and nothing we do here can change any of that. So debt issuance always requires concurrence of council. It requires either competitive bidding or waiver of competitive bidding. We're not going to change that. Then our project plan that we approved, and I think we're pretty careful in working through how the basics of the TIF are going to work. The idea there is we're going to set aside sales taxes that are generated in our increment district and put them in the TIF fund. Now, under the project plan and the ordinance, it says the city is the entity in charge of the TIF district and takes those sales taxes and what's called apportions them, puts them in the TIF fund. But it delegates to the Economic Development Authority, one of its trusts. So like your other trusts, there are certain things that YEDA does. And the things that we've identified in the project plan are sort of the day-to-day management of making this development project happen. Now, the memorandum of understanding then tries to go the next step, and it's still a pretty broad framework. So I think there's considerable following up that will need to happen, especially on the financial side, about exactly what kind of financial reports you want, how often you want them, what information is contained in those reports. We have to work all that out still. But the memorandum of understanding goes through and says that city council is still required to approve all the things the statutes were required to approve, most significantly, debt issuance. Secondly, if there's going to be a contract under which YITA agrees to make a payment to a developer, that's called assistance in development financing. We've said specifically that has to come to this council for approval. And as you would ordinarily do, you've got to approve changes in zoning or land use. If there's a PUD for the development, all that will be done here. I think the harder issues revolve around, on page 3 of the agreement, and I think it's worth taking a moment to see whether this is the way everyone wants to approach it. The step we've taken that goes one step more than your project plan is it says, under C there, that the city, through the city manager and other city staff, shall periodically apportion the sales tax increment in accordance with the formula from the project plan from the increment district into the increment fund, and that fund shall constitute funds of YITA. So there's going to be a transfer from what would be city sales tax in the apportionment fund to making it a YITA fund. So I think it's an open question. Is that the way we want to handle things here? Are there enough strings and is there enough oversight here that council is comfortable with that delegation, or do you want to add some further restrictions? So how those funds will work is that they are controlled in the broadest sense by the TIF project plan. So no TIF funds can be spent in any way that isn't in accord with the categories that you approved when you set up your project plan. And now the big significant ones will have a big agreement with them. They'll either be an agreement with the developer that comes to this body, or there will be an agreement with ODOT for how the financing of the interchange is going to work. All of that will come to council. I think that the issues that are less clear is how do you want to handle the smaller YITA expenses? You know, when they hire outside professionals, is it enough to have that approved as part of YITA's budget, or do you want to have more specific control over those expenditures? And it can be done either way. What this agreement contemplates is the big stuff comes to council, the more day-to-day management stays at YITA, and with either monthly or whatever frequency of reports about what they're doing, how they're spending those smaller funds, and what they're doing with their time.
If I might interject here, I believe in previous YEDA meetings that we had talked about setting a specific limit on the amount of money that would be allowed for the YEDA budget, subject to the city council's approval beyond that limit.
We did, and we haven't specified what that amount is, but it's something I think that would be worth doing.
But should this agreement be approved, that's something we can adjust as time goes on?
Right, and you can adjust this too. I mean, this is sort of our initial roadmap for how we think the left hand and the right hand are going to work together. And if it turns out we need to change it or add more specificity as we actually get into the project, which is still kind of out in front of us, you know, council and YITA can do that anytime. So I see this as being less fixed in a way than like a contract with a developer. This is really inside baseball here, right? You know your trustees, 2 of you are trustees. What will make this work is more the day-to-day, week-to-week conversation, the meetings, you know, with your design team about how you want this carried out. So this is framework, and where the rubber meets the road is going to be those pieces that come here, or those meetings where the individual decisions are made. But with that said, everything in here is up for grabs. So if we need to refine it or change it, this is the meeting where we welcome that input.
I actually had just one more thing, if you don't mind.
Go
I need a little clarification. You know, we're talking about section 4, obligations, responsibilities of the city. Item 1 is, city council approval is required for the issuance of bonds, notes, and/or other debt instruments, and I understand that. But then when you go over to section 5, obligations and responsibilities of YEDA, issue tax apportionment bonds or notes or both, incur project cost, et cetera. To me, that, I may not understand it correctly, but it seems contrary.
I think we need some clarification there because others have had the same question. Councilman Guerin had that same question. What I had intended, but it's not as clear as I had hoped, in the lead-in to that list, you know, it says that all those things are subject to approval of the governing body of the city. But that's less clear once you're looking at the list itself. So whether it's a formatting change or going ahead and saying, you know, the following, let's see.
All of the following.
Yeah, all the following require the approval of the city council, so there's no doubt about that.
Ken, you got any more?
Mayor,
Yeah, actually, I did.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Mayor, I might point out one other thing. Is this memorandum of understanding, in my mind, is an attempt to summarize what is incorporated in the trust indenture that was approved. The trust indenture is a legal document that specifically says that any issuance of debt requires council consideration and approval. So you basically would go back to that as the controlling document, or the controlling instrument, if you will, which is a legal document.
I understand, and I see it similarly, although I think I'm not completely convinced that there's the cohesiveness between those two
Okay,
is
that's
clearly
fine.
understood here.
Sure, sure.
Item B, Section 5, obligations, responsibilities of YEDA. Item B, for example, responsible coordination of redevelopment activities undertaken in the project area. And there are no redevelopments. We haven't
Oh.
developed it yet.
Sorry, that is, I've made that same mistake. I do so much redevelopment work, sometimes I accidentally say redevelopment instead of development. I'm sorry, that is.
That's right. And the other thing, when you go into Section 5, item C, YED shall maintain apportionment fund in accordance with reasonable accounting principles and practices and provide reports about this fund to the city upon reasonable request. And then we see a similar terminology in item D, reasonably requested by the city. Should there not be some clarification in what is considered a reasonable request? I would think that those would be available at any time.
I think that would be totally fine. We're talking about parties that are teammates here. It's probably overly legalistic. You know, it can't be done necessarily upon 5 minutes request generating, you know, a financial report, you know, for where you stand.
Larry's pretty
but-
good. I don't know.
But,
Well-
I don't think that's the problem. And it might actually be useful here to go ahead and say that there would be, you know, monthly TIF reports, you know, provided to city
Yeah.
council.
I think I'd be very comfortable with that.
Yeah. I think I'd like to see it as an agenda item, that a report comes up once a month on
I'm sorry, Larry?
TIF. Is it-
Oh, I was just gonna say that all of your authority records, minutes, financing is gonna be provided through their agendas and through the finance department. So they're gonna be readily available every day from the finance director,
Public record, in other
public
words.
record. So, I mean, we could do it quarterly, monthly, whatever you'd prefer. I don't see a reason to have it as an agenda item on the council. We could have a report.
No, we receive end-of-month reports as it is. I don't know why that would be any different.
No, that's fine.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, this is the area that I'm the most concerned about is, I don't necessarily think that maybe it needs to be a monthly agenda item, but maybe a quarterly agenda item where we actually talk about it. Just because sometimes, and I know that everyone is more diligent than I am, but sometimes there's stuff in my packet that I don't always have the time to read as detailed as I should. And I don't, because this is new and because this is the first time that we've ever seen this, I think that we need to take special caution as we move forward and learn. I don't know, I mean, I'm a lawyer, so I'm skeptical, sorry Leslie, but, you know, I just, as we learn to work, as the two bodies learn to work with each other, but most importantly, you know, we're the stewards of the city's money, and I mean, this is a lot of money, the most important economic, probably, project that we've ever involved. So I think that it probably does, and I know it may make us stay here an extra 10 or 15 minutes, but I think that it's worth it, maybe on a quarterly basis or something.
Okay.
But I think, because that was my question, my big question. Fine, this is a memo of understanding, you say that it's flexible and stuff, but the truth of the matter, you know, Leslie, in the world that we work in as an attorney, we understand that we can change something like this. Most of the people that sit on this council, and I'm not taking away from, they don't realize that they can, especially the next group of people. So that's what I'm always worried about too, is I think there needs to be maybe an annual review where the memo of understanding is annually reviewed between the two bodies, and the council knows that you can make changes. Is this working properly? And maybe staff provides a report to council and says, things are working, and then we look at the audit, and I'm sure that we have some who, you know, and that's my question, who, is Meacham gonna work on this?
Yes.
And that's my
Well,
que-
if the audit is done by Darrell White,
okay,
Meacham is our financial advisor that helps us prepare for that audit.
okay,
And then J.I., the city treasurer, is also the treasurer for YEDA.
okay. So that's what, it sounds like we have three different sets of eyes that are looking at it, so that's good.
We're also required under state statute to provide annual reports to the Department of Commerce, so we have to submit annual reports on our.
And I know it's probably overkill, and I'm probably, but you know what? This makes me more nervous than anything I've ever voted on in my entire life while I've been here for over 10 years.
I'm fine with.
Just because I want the people to know that we've done everything that we can to take care of that money that's going to be taken in by us. And I understand that it may, and I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, if you feel differently, but I just think that we need to be very cautious as we start. I mean, we're talking about a $37 million exchange out there, and I mean, that doesn't even start to touch the amount of money that's going to be generated by this agreement, or flow through this agreement, I guess, over the next decade. So I would like to see some sort of an annual review, that it becomes an agenda item. I'd like to see maybe quarterly reports where someone actually comes and stands before here and is accountable to the council and to the public. I think it's that important. I just don't want to see, you know, if $90,000 can go out of our local soccer league, I don't know what can happen when there's millions of dollars are running through here. And that's not a directed at, what I'm always worried about is when all these people are gone, you know? And Larry, you'll probably be here 20 years from now, but I
Oh, yeah.
won't, I promise you that.
Yeah, I sure will.
But
Or 10
what
years from now, so.
Well, I may be wrong, and correct me if I am, Mr. Alberts, but what I hear you saying is that your greatest concern is transferring power from this council to the YEDA, for the purpose of developing Prairie West development. Is that accurate?
No, just the accountability, the funds that are spent, the money goes from the council to the YEDA, and how, just, where does the money go, how is it spent, because we've talked about, are we gonna put a limit of, what amount of money they can spend without council approval, and I guess we're gonna talk about that here in a little while, maybe tonight. I have to believe that there will be some money that ends up in the Economic Development Board that doesn't come through the council. Is that true?
Possible.
Yeah. So that's something that I haven't even brought up. So here's money that I foresee coming into their control that doesn't come through us. So I want to know, when they get $10 or $10,000 or $1 million, how are they going to spend it? So that's why I like to see the quarterly reports. That's my thought. So no.
Go, period.
Yeah.
This agreement, however, is just for this project plan out there. The authority can do more things than just this project. And it's easy enough to ask Leslie to include in this agreement that one of the responsibilities of the YEDA is to have a representative at a council meeting every quarter to make a presentation on the progress and answer
And that
questions.
sounds like what everyone here
Well,
is
you know, we
asking
asked
for.
for,
Well, we can just ask Leslie to put that in there as one of the responsibilities.
I mean, does
It's
that
easy enough.
seem unreasonable,
No.
just to come
Our-
and have a report?
No.
And it may, and I understand this is for this project,
Mhm.
but I can't imagine there being a bigger project, the
Probably won't be
170 some
bigger,
acres,
no.
yeah, a larger, more, involving more money or more resources.
Probably not, but there are other things.
Absolutely.
We currently have within our agenda construct reports of boards, commissions, and city officials. Certainly, if you added the Yetta Commission to that, you could say none this evening, or we can specifically request that as well. It's just another option.
Well, that's certainly a spot on the agenda that it would fit, but I think that's a monthly, and I agree that maybe a quarterly would be more appropriate.
With month end.
Yeah,
With end of month
every-
reports, which we receive those anyway.
It'll be there for all of us to look on a monthly basis, but every quarter we'll stop, we'll pause, we'll be very deliberate, and have, Larry or whoever make just a brief. Does anyone else do anything like that, Leslie? It's probably overkill, isn't it?
No, I don't think it is at all. I think that as we begin to get into the project, you're going to have some periods where you're engaged with what's going on, every meeting.
Right.
So, and I think the big pieces ahead of us are initially, a master development agreement, with the developer where we're going to talk through both the process of, what they're asking for, how we're going to even establish exactly what they're asking for, because in a multi-phased project, they may not be looking very far down the road yet, they have a rough sense. But so part of what we'll get in place is not just an understanding that, we're doing X and you're doing Y. It's, well, what's going to happen when we get phase one done? What's the roadmap for getting this project done? So there's going to be this flurry of activity initially, getting that part worked out and getting design guidelines in place and meeting the developers and seeing if, they're the real deal and talking through what the components of the project will be. And then I think further down the road, we'll probably have some, financial pieces that will come back here, and we'll talk about amounts. What are the costs that the public side is going to have to bear? How much are those? What are they for? Is that money worth is that something worth spending money on? Are we talking about roads and drainage, or are we talking about park? Very specific pieces, and you'll see, what the costs are. Is it TIF money that's paying for that? Is the developer paying it and we're paying him back later? All
Well,
the
Leslie, that's actually set up in the project plan, though, correct?
Yes.
It doesn't have anything to do with the
That's correct.
memorandum of understanding. That
Well,
was set up in a project plan we'd already approved.
That's
But
right.
only in these broad senses of the categories of the expenditures. None of it, nothing you've approved so far says anything about any private entity getting a penny. So if we're gonna start doing things to help make the private development happen, those are pieces that will basically have to come back here. And the big pieces certainly will be coming back here. So I think really there'll be a high level of engagement initially, so it'll be much more often than quarterly. But then, if there's a quiet period, then checking in quarterly to make sure, well, what's happening? Why haven't we heard anything? I think that's a good backstop position. Every city's a little different on this, and, the bigger the community, sometimes the more delegation occurs in terms of like the individual contracts. But anytime you're spending city sales tax or doing any issuance of debt, the city manager and the city council are the ones at the end of the day deciding whether that's what's going to be done or not. So that part is not unusual. I think what's maybe unusual here, or at least not very common, is to have such a big project ahead, and at this point having it a relatively blank slate. It's not redevelopment. You're not working within the framework of an existing, city where you're trying to add on to the health center, for example, or, rebuild your blighted downtown. That gives you a certain, a specified framework. You kind of know what's going to need to happen. This is much more wide open, so it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that there would be a lot more questions about what's going to happen and how are we going to do this.
Well, unless we have further questions.
I still do.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. McCarron.
You made a statement a little bit earlier about planning issues revolving around zoning changes and PUDs and things of that nature, and how we approach that. And I guess within this document, is there something there that tells me what that process is, that it comes back through the city planning organization and comes up through the planning commission and then to the city? Or does it go right from YETA directly to the council? Or I'm trying to understand that process.
That will work just the same way it always does, because that's controlled by city ordinance and
So,
it's
any
agreement.
request then for a zoning change would come from the developer or YETA, or would it come, one of those two? And that would go to the planning commission,
Correct.
or,
It
okay,
would-
and
It'd
is
be an
that,
application just like any other rezoning request.
okay, and it still would be subject to the same fees and da-da-da-da-da and all of that,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Is that correct? Now, would that be made by the developer, or would it be made by YETA, or either?
Depends. I mean, that's not a good answer, but it depends on what the circumstances are, the situation that's being, the
Yeah.
request,
I
who's
don't,
making the
I think that's
request.
another area where I think we need to, the process, if you will, about how we need those things defined. How's it gonna show up here? Will other people have seen it, et cetera?
I think it won't be any different than any other development process. Private development process could go through the very same steps that any other development process
Okay.
would go.
One other just item, I'll take tonight. We have encumbered YETA at this point with the folks that came and presented information that are, professional planning services.
Yes.
Okay, that will go to YETA. Is that correct? I'm trying to get my hands around the billing process. And that will come to you as an invoice to YEDA, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's
and then-
part of our, we have a budgeted number in our budget that was approved tonight by the council.
Okay, and then
and
that, it will be paid out of that budget until such time as
We start
we have
collecting,
tax.
we
right.
start collecting enough revenue, and then there will be discussion on how that's going to be shared, because, again, all the money that comes into the TIF district has to be spent within the boundaries of the TIF district.
That's
So-
correct.
So if we're asking the architectural firm to do work on Main Street, we can't spend the money that we have in the TIF district for that. It's gonna have to be somehow apportioned or split out. So we can allocate those costs between the Economic Development Authority and the city.
Okay, so would the Development Authority be doing something like that now, or are you now?
Doing what now?
Doing concurrent development pieces with Main Street and/or out here within the
Not
YETA
currently, no. We're just on the initial steps. We got the city got their approval through the Oklahoma Main Street program in March.
Could I interject something here just
Sure.
for the sake of time? We're actually getting off topic of the agenda item that we're discussing.
Okay.
Our downtown development has zero to do with this memorandum of understanding that we're
Right.
discussing right now.
Right. The part of the problem with the process is that we have no revenue yet. I mean, once you start receiving revenue, then that process will
Well,
start
I mean,
getting
that-
fetted
I
out.
perceive with Hobby Lobby going in pretty quickly and Kirkland's and other things that are in the district, that should change pretty quickly. That's something we'll face.
Within
pretty
90
quickly.
days.
Yeah.
By September, you'll start seeing a revenue stream pick up.
So, I mean, we're gonna see that, but that's why I broached the question there as to, so that but you're set up in such a way that none of those funds necessarily then would be commingled, is that?
It cannot be.
Okay.
Process-wise, would it make sense then for me to do a redlined revision, adding the suggestions from this evening, and then that we put it on does it come back for a future agenda?
Actually, do we have any additional questions?
Were we
at
gonna
this
talk,
point?
were we gonna talk about how much, we were gonna set a limit on what the?
That actually is something that I would like to bring up. I would entertain a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with just a couple of changes that I've taken from the discussion we've had this evening. One of which is a specified limit on what YEDA would be authorized to spend subject to the city council's approval. I think that Section 5, item B, responsible coordination of redevelopment should be changed to development. And I would like a clarification. I think we need to add reasonable request and reasonably requested by the city. I think a time frame actually should be added there.
Yeah, what if I strike reasonably and add, at least, add monthly reports on the accounting side and quarterly general reports?
I would entertain a motion to approve, subject to those changes.
And does the motion also include an annual
Review of the agreement.
Of the
Right.
agreement.
agreement and then the quarterly reports?
Yeah,
He
mon-
just said
yeah,
that.
Okay,
monthly, end of the
sorry.
month reports, quarterly presentation, annual review.
You got all that down, Doug?
Barely.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Well, I guess that's, so moved, that's an amended motion, right?
Yes,
Yeah, so moved.
subject to those changes, correct. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion?
One question, do we want to go ahead and set that limit tonight?
Of
Or
the dollar
fo-
amount?
Yeah, or follow up on that?
I
would
think,
suggest that we not set the limit tonight until we kind of get an idea of what
Right.
types, kinds, categories of expenditures that the authority may run into. I don't know that it's necessary to do that just yet.
and that could be a future agenda item as
Absolutely.
an addendum to this agreement.
An amendment and
Right.
codicil.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
agree.
Would you like to amend your motion accordingly?
So moved.
Second?
That was Donna.
Second.
Donna
Thank
was the
you.
second, yeah.
Do we have any additional discussion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alberts.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
McCarron.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Yonda.
Yes.
Item 8 is consider approving the final plat of Frisco Ridge Phase 2, a tract of land containing 1,035,628 square feet, or 23.775 acres more or less, situated within a portion of the northwest quarter of Section 19, Township 12 North, Range 5 West of the Indian Meridian in Yukon, Canadian County, Oklahoma, as recommended by the Community Development Director. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like some explanation. Some of the people are here that own the land out north of town, and we've got a memo in our stuff that says that there's not going to be any additional discharge, et cetera. Can we get some sort of who's here to, Rick, are you going to present it, or? Can you provide us just a history from the last time we were here until now, what's happened, and maybe some assurance about the study, what you've done, your work, et cetera?
Yeah, Phil Hagan with Craft and Toll and Associates representing the applicant. We submitted our on-site drainage report to Mr. Williams. He sent it on to an expert in hydrology. They spent 3 months studying the entire basin. And what you got back is actually from Mr. Utley. And his report pretty much confirmed our study, showing that we are not going to have an adverse impact on the downstream property owners.
All right, as far as the adverse, there are ponds, I mean, what are you doing to control the water?
Yeah, we are going to have several detention ponds, and those ponds will be built right at the beginning of construction. They'll be over-excavated to allow for sedimentation, and so, yeah, there'll be multiple ponds, one basically per phase that we're doing.
Okay, so, go
And
ahead.
they're oversized ponds. I mean, we're over-detaining our runoff.
So what's the life expectancy of those ponds with the sedimentation?
That's something that we have not looked at. I mean, just like any pond, they're gonna have to be maintained once every 15, 20 years. They're gonna naturally, silt in, but we're gonna have 8 foot of water below the outlet structure. So they'll have 8 foot of storage.
So is it the type of pond that will constantly hold water, or will it
Yes.
go dry?
No, they'll constantly hold water, and they're gonna be landscaped, and there'll be water features, fountains or something like that. So, and walking trails around them, they're gonna be nice features.
Okay.
That hold water all the time.
So the constant level is 8 feet below the discharge point?
Correct, there'll be 8 foot of water, and then above that will be storage for detention. So they'll be down, the water level as you drive by will be down a little bit to allow for the storage during a storm event, but they will maintain 8 foot of water below that. So they'll aesthetically be pleasing.
Okay. So are they 100-year flood ponds? Are they 500-year flood ponds? So at what point, I guess, in a large rain like we had, you know, maybe the one last year is probably not a good example, but a 5-inch rain or some sort of a flash flood, what level of
They're designed
Detention,
for
retention.
multiple storms from the 2 all the way to the 100-year storm.
Okay.
And even at the 100-year, they have additional storage above that.
As far as the maintenance of them, is there something that's in the covenants or something that where there's, I don't know.
They will be
Home-
owned by the HOA in a common area, so the HOA will be maintaining them.
So, and that's in the HOA agreement that they'll be required to maintain and keep them cleaned out every 15 years or whatever the,
Correct.
okay.
I read that study, and there's just one part I'm not sure I understand, and I believe it's in conjunction with the ponds, in order for those to be functional, upflow, I guess you'd call it, there's a one-way to keep the drains from silting as it travels north and east? Some
What-
type of one-way
He had
device?
a flapper gate.
Yeah.
I briefly reviewed his executive summary. I mean, the report itself is probably 3 inches thick.
Yeah.
I just looked over and he suggested that if we're discharging into an area that's like directly into the creek itself, you have a flap gate on there to allow, so it can't back up into the pond. I don't
Okay.
believe that's gonna be the situation that we have, but if we were to have that, he made that suggestion.
Okay, so in this final plat, though, I didn't see anything that mentioned a flap gate,
'Cause
as the study had mentioned the flap gate.
right, we're discharging above the 100-year in the creek, so the situation he's talking about doesn't exist.
Water's never gonna get that high because they're on the south side of 66 and that standing water's on the,
On the north
North side of
north and
66.
east, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I didn't, and that's part I didn't really understand, so.
Yeah, it acts basically like a check valve.
So it wasn't something in conjunction with the flood ponds, it was something
Downstream.
downstream, further north, that would have nothing to do with the
Oh.
development? I really need a clarification on that.
Maybe Robbie can,
You have 3 different reports in there, and I know he did talk about flap gates at the river. That way, when the water within the river rises, you have a flap gate so it doesn't reverse flow and go back through the 18 or 24-inch pipe on the other side of the levee.
Right, for additional silting and debris and so
Or
on, is
flooding.
that correct?
Flooding.
Additional flood, okay. Does this final plat, as you understand it then, not require those flap gates?
That's correct. We do not have, I'm not aware of a detention pond in Yukon with a flap gate.
Yep.
As he's saying, his pond will discharge, his outlet pipe is above the 100-year elevation of the creek, so his water will just be,
it'll
Flowing
free
right
flow
into
into the
it.
creek, and the creek will not back up into our detention pond.
Okay,
right.
okay, that answers my question, thank you very much. Do we have any further discussion? No further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Russell,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Yonda,
Yes.
Alberts.
yes.
McCarron.
Yes,
Item 9, consider approving resolution number 2014-08, a resolution authorizing the calling and holding of a special election in the city of Yukon, county of Canadian, state of Oklahoma, to be held on the 26th day of August 2014 for the purpose of submitting the qualified electors of the city of Yukon, Oklahoma, the question of whether the proposed amendment to the city charter, section 5 of City of Yukon, should be ratified, approving, and adopted, which proposed amendment would be different from the present charter by changing section 5, the election of councilman at large, by a majority vote of the qualified voters of the city of Yukon shall serve as mayor, setting forth the proposition to be voted upon, directing the city clerk to cause this resolution to be published in the newspaper of the general circulation in the city, directing the city clerk to deliver a copy of this resolution to the Secretary of the Canadian County Election Board and to furnish said board a current map of the city, a copy of the city charter as it relates to the conduct of elections, and any other information required by law or necessary for conducting said election. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion?
So moved, I'll move so we can talk about it.
Thank you. Actually, that's
And
what I
I'll
was going to
second
inquire
it.
of the clerk. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
What would the term of the mayor be?
4 years.
If,
4 years?
yeah,
Okay.
With the at-large position.
Okay.
and I will openly admit, I do believe that the at-large position should hold position of the mayor. The concern, though, that I have is 4 years is a long time. 4 years is a long time. If Bozo the Clown, for some freak occurrence, won the at-large city council seat, he would then be sitting, or she would then be sitting as mayor of our city for 4 years. I think that this would be a good idea if there were recourse, an option for the council to make a change of some kind if so required. I mean, if we had a mayor that after 2 years didn't show up to meetings or rode backwards on his horse to the, city functions, something, if there was some legitimate reason that that mayor should no longer sit as mayor, I think we need an alternative. And is that a legal option? I don't know. I'm counting on Mr.
We could
Segler
work
here.
that out, but with the things that you're describing, the concerns that you're describing, would subject that council member, whether he's the mayor or a Ward 1 representative, to forfeit his office for failure to attend the adequate number of meetings within the period of time described in the charter, subject him to recall, which we've had a few of those in the history of the city.
And you did just say that was already existing in the charter.
It is. It is. That is.
Does anybody else see a feasible idea? I would not want to change our at-large city councilman every 2 years, but is there anything that could be added or edited in this circumstance that would allow a reappointment short of a recall within our charter?
We have in the city of Yukon had consecutive terms as mayor. It's not uncommon for the same person to be elected mayor year after year. The mayor's is a one-year term, but the council may, from among its members, select or elect another mayor or
Yes.
in a different term.
I understand, and I'm
Yeah,
an
that happens.
example of that.
Yeah,
Mr.
right.
Roberts has been an example of that, but I think, at least my personal goal within this would be that the citizens of Yukon would have a say of some kind as to who sits as mayor, who represents their city as mayor. And again, the only thing that concerns me is 4 years is a long time. I would appreciate input from my fellow
Yeah.
council members. Does anyone else have or
Well, as-
share that concern?
As the vice mayor, sitting down here, I will tell you that I see other groups and, it's been noted in our notes and stuff that other communities do that. I don't know if you've ever been to a Piedmont City Council meeting or some of the others where they have an elected mayor per se, but it tends to be a situation where there's almost a separation of power amongst the council.
Well,
as a-
we
as
need to
a
be
result.
clear here, though, that if this were approved, the mayor would still hold no more power than our
Well-
mayor, existing mayor does, that we run a council, city manager form of government, not a strong mayor form of government. So I think it needs to be made clear that whether this is approved or disapproved, our mayor has one vote, just like every other council person has
Well,
one
the
vote.
voting part doesn't, the fact that if you're the mayor, you control the agenda, You control a lot of other things within that. It certainly puts you in a more powerful position in the community as far as, all of the people in my ward say, well, it would be really nice if you were mayor, and they told me that, okay? And I said, well, with the kind that we have, that may happen someday, the kind of current government that we have. And I think the reason that we work as well together as we do over the last few years that I've been here, last couple of years on the council, was the fact that we have the ability to rotate that around for each one of the wards, and each ward then would have a mayor sometime during that person's term. And I share Ken's concern too, that having a mayor for 4 years running, and I guess what scares me is not the fact that it would be Bozo the Clown necessarily, but that it would be someone who doesn't have a clue what's going on the council, has not sat through previous informational meetings and all of the other stuff that we have that go on to bring you up to speed. It's taken me over a year to be really comfortable with everything that goes on. And I think if you elect someone that comes in here that doesn't have a clue, I not only seeing that as being a very bad thing, but I also look at it as a separation of power. It's a you versus us kind of thing. And right now, it's only a 1-year term. And next year, it'll be someone else, unless someone else wants and chooses to serve, and with everybody else, it's okay. So we have a confluence of people coming together, and part of that glue, I think, is the ability of the council to elect a mayor every year who puts forth the things that the council is all about. So having been around other councils and seen some of the other activities that have occurred, I just really feel like that I would hate to see it go away, and that's just my feeling, because I think it adds to the cohesiveness. I think people get along better because it really creates a peer of equals, not one person who's separated from the others. And it just seems like, our city forefathers, when they thought their way through this, that's why they chose that mechanism. And so that's my take on it. I'll leave it at that.
Two things I would mention. One is, if you were to knock on 100 doors in the city of Yukon, 90 of the people living behind those doors would not know that the mayor's position is not elected by the citizens of Yukon. I think they would be unaware of that.
90 of them wouldn't know the mayor.
That's probably
With all
true.
due respect, I don't mean that.
No.
Yeah.
I respect that completely, and I understand your point. The other thing is, Yukon, for better or worse, we're no longer a small city. We operate on a national level, and I think, and you guys tell me if you feel differently, but I think that if we had a mayor that sat for more than 1 year, or possibly 2 years, there's some that have been 2 years, some even more, but we would be able to hold higher position on statewide committees or national organizations. It's hard for others, and I'm basing this on conversations I've had at conventions we've attended. It's hard for others to look at our city council very, very seriously as far as holding a position of authority within those groups, when potentially they're dealing with someone for a year and establish a relationship, and then that person, no longer serves as mayor, and another person serves as mayor. So I think for that reason, I think this is something that we need to look into. I'm not sure if this is 100% the way that we should be doing it. I don't know that yet. I think that discussion amongst the council and input from our citizens would be very, very advantageous as far as making this decision. Again, I think that it would be a good move with, with consideration that 4 years is a long time. Again, that, I do have a concern there. I can think of people that I would not like to see sitting in this seat for a year. Maybe I'm one of them, I don't know, but, based on that, I would entertain a motion to table this until our next meeting.
We already have a motion and a second on the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, lost track. I talked
I'd like
so
to-
much, Mike, that I lost
Fine,
track.
he can amend it.
I'd like to amend my motion to table this, can I say indefinitely, or do we have to put a,
Well, if you put table, it's coming back next meeting, you can continue it or postpone it.
I would like to postpone it.
Postpone it indefinitely, and then whenever.
Could I ask something first, before we actually take that step? If we postpone it, I'd like to know how long, before an election it would have to be on the agenda.
We've got to give the county election board 75 days notice.
75 days.
It used to be 60, but now it's 75.
Does that change your feeling at all, Mr. Allen?
No, I'd like to have I'd like to have a study session where we can discuss this a little bit, because, for instance, when you bring up the idea of getting on national committees and stuff, I think that a lot of those people on national committees come from cities that don't have term limits. So you also have to look at the effect, I mean, by the time you start to work your way up through that, having, like you've been to some of these meetings. So I think once you, and I just thought of that tonight, so I think that there needs to be some discussion. And Mike, I'd like to know kind of the history of how we got to where we are. Was there an event in the past, at one time, were we a mayoral city? A strong mayor city, is it called?
We were a town.
A town?
And then we became a city.
So the-
As far as my knowledge, we've always been a council manager form.
Council manager,
Ever
okay.
since 19, whatever it was.
Okay.
62, when we converted from a town to a city.
Okay. I just think that this became a really serious issue. We've talked about it for a long time, and when it showed up on the agenda, I've called and talked with Ken, I've called and spoken with Grayson. I mean, all of a sudden, it's reality, and I think it's a big change if we do it. I think there are pros and cons, and I certainly have been a supporter in the past of wanting to allow us to be involved more nationally. I think that's important. But also, having been here for the last 10 years, harmony has value, and the fact that we can work together, and these council meetings typically don't last an hour, but we're able to come and conduct business and be civil to one another, I think that has value. If you get someone in here with an agenda, and they, like Mike says, and they don't have any knowledge or background, they don't know what a pump station is, or, those type of things, so I would like to see us table it, and not continue it indefinitely, and ask that it be set as soon as possible for a study session, so we can maybe get some background and brainstorm and have a conversation about it. That's my amended motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion? No further discussion. Call the roll, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Yonda,
Yes.
McCarron,
Yes.
Russell. Yes. Alberts.
Yes.
Item 10 is the city manager's report. These are information items only.
Very quickly, events report. This Saturday, June the 7th, will be the Chisholm Trail Crawfish Festival at the Kirkpatrick Family Farm. Always a lot of fun. We'll be celebrating our Chisholm Trail heritage and the history of the trail, along with doing it Cajun style. The Buffalo Bills Wild West Show, gunfights, chicken races, kids creative corral, goat grab, crawfish eating contest, live Cajun music with dance lessons. It's all free. It begins at 10 in the morning and goes to 6 in the afternoon. Also on Thursday, June the 5th, I believe it is. I believe that's Thursday of this week. We start our summer concert series. This week is a little. No, it's
No, it's not.
2
Well,
weeks. Well, it says the 6th here.
They were kidding.
Anyway, the 12th, we're going to start the summer concert series. The first one includes the Bark at the Park contest at 6:30. There's also going to be Smilin' Vic and the Soul Monkeys will be the band, and followed by a dog movie known as Beethoven that'll be shown after the concert. We will have concerts throughout the summer every Thursday night, and we're also going to have at least 4 movie slots throughout the summer to come and enjoy a movie in the park in our new outdoor theater. Also, we're going to have family fun days that are on Fridays at various Yukon parks. You'll need to be watching for those throughout the weeks coming, but family fun days every Friday throughout the summer. And finally, we have the Freedom Fest tribute to veterans that'll be on July the 3rd, followed by Freedom Fest on July the 4th. Please make yourself available for those events on the 4th of July. We will probably be hosting somewhere between 35 and 40,000 people in our community to come watch fireworks as we move forward. Also, June is National Safety Month. I gave you a flyer concerning that that we have been passing around. Our safety program is working very, very well here in the city. As we told you at the safety banquet, we reduced our claims by 52% in 1 year, and in large part due to our safety program that we've instituted. Also, Yukon has been named as one of the Oklahoma Clean Communities by the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality. This recognition is a new program through the Oklahoma Used Tire and Recycling Program. More to come on that as we move forward, but there will be a awards presentation done in this chamber. Tammy? June the 27th. Okay? Just a quick one. You'll be seeing more about that as we move forward. Also, we had prepared for your consumption the rules for public participation in open meetings. And we hand this out to you. It includes what we think the rules ought to be, as well as a resolution and a registration form moving forward as to how and when you speak at the council meeting. And then finally, talking about development projects, I don't think that we have announced formally to this body that Kirkland's is going to be locating on the south 7,000 square feet of the building that's being constructed on the back or to the west of Johnny Carino's. So they're taking 7,000 of that 15,000 square foot building. Don't have any clue on what's going to take the remaining 8,000 square feet. Also, the splash pad got kicked off on the 21st to a lot of kids. I don't know if you were able to go down and be there for the grand opening, but there were kids all over the place. You couldn't turn around on the splash pad. We're still working through some things on the splash pad that are part of opening any new venue. It is not like any other venue that the city has ever had before, in that there are no lifeguards. There's nobody down there cracking a whip and blowing a whistle and saying, "Don't run." So we're still working through several of those items, and we'll be making some improvements moving forward. I would also say that when it comes to a splash pad, that's our first. The idea would be to have at least 3 more scattered out across our city so that we serve all segments of the city, all parts of the city, north, south, east, and west, with a splash pad venue for our park system. With that, Mayor, I stand ready for your questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the city manager? No questions. Item 11 is new business.
None this evening.
None this evening. Item 12, council discussion. Councilman McCarron.
Yeah, I just want to extend a personal thanks to Arnold. We received a vehicle registration for all the vehicles that we currently have, and it was something we've asked for a little while, and he was kind enough to get that for us, and also a note on the maintenance dollars. As probably most of you know, I'm always interested in the maintenance of our vehicles and stuff like that, and I think it's going extremely well, and I appreciate that, Arnold. And I'll just say one thing. I got an email just before I came today. It came at noon from, well, I won't say her name, but it said, "Hi, I just returned from the new splash pad. Best thing Yukon has ever done. My grandkids had a blast. Can't wait to go back. Hope to see more of these built." So I think that, speaks well of our direction and what's going on. So with that.
Thank you. Councilman Russell.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about the splash pad. That's in my district, and I've been watching it going by there. I will comment, the families just, you can't go by that there's not always just groups and groups of families, and they're all having a ball, so I'm really happy how that turned out. Really pleased with it. That's it for me.
All right. Thank you. Councilwoman Yonda.
I as well have had many compliments about the splash pad. They said it's the best thing Yukon's ever done. So I think we need to look at implementing more real soon. So thank you.
Councilman Alberts.
I was there. I would say there was 500 to 800 people, and it was really, it was a neat deal. So there were kids. You're right. You couldn't turn around. It was an amazing, and I think I got an email like Mike did. So I'm looking forward to some more of those. Talking about water, there were 3 families here, and only one is lurking around the corner there. But we did a water study, and I guess that part of that had to deal with this development, but also the water study also applies to the families out there in the floodplain, and part of that water study was to help us to understand part of the drainage, the standing water, et cetera, right?
That's
so
correct.
that is an
And
ongoing.
that's in Dropbox if you want to go look at it.
Okay, for me, but I also want the families to know that we're continuing to work on that, and we've not, just because this matter passed tonight, doesn't mean that we're not continuing to study the situation and work with it, and I hate that Mr. Treadway left, but if you could share that with him, or I'll try to get a hold of him, but what is the can you give any kind of an update? I mean, what?
I got one from Robbie this evening. The preliminary has been issued on parts 2 and 3. We now, after Robbie and I visited, that will be turned final, and the final report will be assembled. We'll bring that to council in a final form for you to acknowledge that it has been delivered to the city. And then once that's done, it's a public document, and at least the summary pages, because the part 1 of the study, I think, is somewhere around 250 pages long.
Okay.
So the other 2 are not that long, but at least part 1. Altogether, it'll be well over 300 pages.
And then from there, will it be an agenda item where the family can come again and talk to us like they did? I mean, or I guess it will come to council, and then do we move forward as far as?
That we would then come to you with the suggested cures, if any.
Okay, so the report will suggest the cures.
There are options within those reports.
Okay.
Some options. There are some that will be disappointed in the report.
I understand.
Right.
Okay, but the report checks in the mail, so it's on the way and will be available for the citizens to review and look at.
All you want to get of that.
All right, now
At least 400 pages.
when's the other 2 parts of it will be here when?
Well, we've received,
When will it be available to the community? That's what, I guess, my question.
End of the month.
well,
Okay,
okay, very good.
end of the month. All right. I think I'll stop. I've talked enough tonight.
I'll keep it short, but I just want to let everyone know that I so appreciate the discussion that we were able to share tonight. I think that we covered some very important points. I think we made some very important progress. And regarding our splash pad, I want to thank Councilman Alberts. I was out of town at the grand opening, but he was so kind as to text me a picture, and it was overwhelming. And I'm so proud of that splash pad. I would just say that, you know, being of my age and having had to walk to school uphill barefoot both ways, that we had sprinklers. So I want to thank the city, and I hope that that our citizens enjoy that splash pad, and I'm excited there are more in our plans. And with that, we stand adjourned.